All right, Joey. I'm here. Let's see if we can find what you wanted me to see.
I summoned the demon. Joey, I leave you alone for 2 seconds! Hello, hi, welcome in. I'm your host Anandai and you're watching the newest addition to our Panic to Comic series, Bendy and the Ink Machine. In case you're new here, Panic to Comic is a series. No way, is it really? Where we make a use out of horror games in order to turn them into a slice of life with none of the tragedies or horrors. Though I will say it, I kept a tiny bit of the horrors in this one. Before we start, I'd like to announce that as much as I love Bendy and the Dark Revival, the whole game is just a huge time skip and I didn't want to deal with that for the time being, so it's not gonna be mentioned here. Who knows, maybe if this video does well, I might bring a part 2. And also, I'd like to shout out Gaming Harry for summarizing the Bendy lore in the video from 3 years ago, because it sure made my job a lot easier here. And now without further ado, let's get into it. Now, for the story we want to make, we need to go back. Way back. Back to when Joey Drew Studios was still standing 30 years ago. For that reason, I'm redesigning Joey and Henry to look a bit younger, and no, this wasn't me making up excuses because I'm not good with drawing older looking men, I promise it makes sense. Grabbing visual references of these characters was a challenge in and of itself, because the main game is in first person and 99% of the time covered in that yellow old paper texture. I adore this game's aesthetic choices, but I didn't realize how much they'd make me struggle. And mind you, these are the most relevant human characters in the game. I ended up referencing Henry's design from Bendy and the Dark Revival while kinda guessing from his values what he'd look like in full color, and Joey's design from the comics, which the wiki says isn't canon, but who cares, I'm using it anyways. I did have an easier time with Joey since he does have a fully colored model, so there's that. Also, I mentioned on my previous video that I'd start to sketch with more confident, singular lines, and I just want to say it, I'm keeping that promise. Sketching with less lines gave me the confidence to experiment with thinner line art than I usually do, since there's no reason to make the line art brush thicker than the sketch one, as there is no longer the struggle to find the correct line to follow. I did keep the line variation I already do a bit further in the speed paint, and I personally like the result, but do let me know what you think. And I didn't change much in terms of clothes, I just kinda mixed and matched outfits they already had in order to get the vibe I wanted, so I mainly focused on posing and personality. Speaking of personality, I added a little comic strip in the style of the game's projector cutscenes to show off the way they interact in this universe. I started out trying to make it a traditional comic book format, but I sorta subconsciously made it on a vertical scrolling format because that's what I'm accustomed to, because I have a webcomic you should totally read. I mean, who said that? And also, I tried to make them as in character as I could while still trying to fit them in this new genre. I'm not sure how well I did. But mostly, I made Joey being actually optimistic about his idea of bringing Bendy to life, believing that this would attract people to watch their productions, aka this Joey is pretty much what original Joey wanted people to believe he was. And Henry is a bit skeptical about the plan, but still goes along with it. This whole scenario is inspired by Henry's description of Joey being a man of ideas and only ideas, and wait, was that? Bendy is already crazy popular by the time Bendyland comes along? That's a good question, and conveniently, a good hook to talk about the lore. On the original story, Bendy becomes a huge success, causing Joey to get more greedy, everything starts to kick off, and you know how that ended. In this AU, however, things aren't going so well for Joey Drew Studios. Joey still has the idea of creating Bendyland and bringing the studio's characters to life with the ink machine, but this time it was more of an attempt to try something innovative to grab people's attention, and just like the original, things go wrong. As the one who was created, or rather summoned, wasn't Bendy, but something else. Whenever the ink machine is involved, there's a very thin line between science and magic. And the ink demon uses that line like it's a jump rope. Even in the original version, the way the machine works is pretty unclear on whether it's actual magic, actual science, or whatever. It brings flavor to it, honestly. What we do know for sure is that we can bring the studio's characters to life, but for it to work properly, it needs a living soul. The original Ink Demon wasn't created with one, and so he looked and felt off, eventually leading Joey to order for him to be locked away. We all know how well that worked out, but what if the ink machine's first creation had been granted a soul, just not a full one? In this version, Joey is much more present in the creation of the ink machine, stating that he'll figure out how to bring Bendy to life, approaching this more as a personal project, with the mindset that if you want something done right, you should do it yourself. None of the employees, aside from Henry, knows about this project, but they know of Joey's secretiveness whenever he's working on something new, which most of the time leads to random requests and extra tasks that lead nowhere. While this new project started like usual, it soon started to take more resources than it should, for a longer time than it should. The studio as a whole starts to grow both annoyed and even concerned. Henry himself warns Joey to call it off given the amount of all-nighters he pulled to work on something that at this point was causing more harm than good. Heck, Henry lost count of how many times he saw Joey accidentally drink the ink he was working with instead of water. But he doesn't listen. He never really does. Not when I'm this close to finishing it, he says. And then, mid-argument with Henry, as if to prove his point, Joey turns on the ink machine, causing it to malfunction, spilling ink everywhere. Henry manages to pull Joey out of the mess, but to both of their surprise, there was something else moving in the ink. A creature not unlike Bendy, but not much like him either. More undefined. Joey rushes and puts a wooden dummy next to the creature, which manages to use it as a way to maintain some structure. Looking at the Ink Demon's humanoid form is like looking at an odd yet cohesive fusion between Bendy, the character he was supposed to be, and Joey Drew, who is the shape he's imitating, and who is ecstatic that his project worked out. And with that, we arrive to the actual plot of this AU. Trying to bring Bendy to the big screens with the help of the creature Joey named Inky, despite how much both the Ink Demon and Henry cringe at the name. All while hiding the fact that he's a supernatural entity? Man-created entity? Actual demon? Actual Bendy? Regardless of what he is, that information becoming public could scare off investors, so it's best to avoid it. I figured it'd be better to present the story before anything about the Ink Demon's design, since due to him being both the catalyst of the story and a direct consequence to Joey's actions, I had to change him drastically from his in-game version. I decided to focus on his shape-shifting abilities as a possible way for him to pass as a normal human with the help of wooden vessels, like I mentioned in the story section. This would be useful for him to walk around the lively studio freely as one of the employees. No one really knows where he came from or what exactly his function is, but Joey declared him the newest assistance manager, which is awfully generic. But regardless, the Ink Demon, Indigo Damon, is always supervising and helping anyone in any way he can to make the best material possible to get him, Bendy, more viewership, and is overall boosting the studio's morale with his wacky schemes. So they don't really question his uncanny smile, or his pitch black eyes, or the fact that no one has seen him leave the studio after working hours. Maybe he just has the extra job of helping Joey close for the day, so let the man work. And with that, we reached the end of the video. Thank you for staying until this point. Feel free to comment your favorite design or any shenanigans you can imagine happening in this hypothetical series. Remember to leave a like on the video and to subscribe if you aren't already for more content from yours truly. And now I leave you with a little montage of the mini comics I made throughout the video so you can read them more easily, and until we meet again,